Imagine standing out in your backyard on a perfectly clear, crisp night. You're, looking up at the sky, tracing the constellations, just feeling that familiar sense of awe at how vast and beautiful and fundamentally empty it all is.
Right, that classic feeling of staring into the void.
Exactly. But then this completely different thought creeps in. What if that vast, dark expanse isn't a frontier just waiting for us to explore it? What if you are staring up into the void and something entirely invisible, completely unexplainable, is looking right back down at you?
Yeah, that thought alone, it fundamentally rewrites our entire relationship with the cosmos. Because, I mean, if the dark isn't empty, then the solar system isn't just some sandbox for human expansion.
No, not at all.
It's a room where we suddenly realize, we're the only ones sitting in the dark.
And that deeply unsettling realization is the exact pulse of today's deep dive. We are looking at a stack of sources that, frankly, read like the first act of a sci-fi thriller, but they are terrifyingly grounded in our current reality.
Very grounded. The data we're looking at is incredibly sobering.
Yeah, we are pulling from a collection of recently leaked communications from, the absolute highest tiers of aerospace contractors. And we're cross-referencing that with independent astronomical tracking reports from observatories down in Chile. Plus, a rigorous behavioral analysis of some recent, highly unusual interviews with SpaceX leadership.
It's basically a mosaic of data that, on its own, might just look like statistical noise, right? But when you overlay these sources, they point to a localized anomaly that simply shouldn't exist.
Right. So our mission today is to cut through all the internet noise and investigate these rumors head on. We are talking about a sudden, completely unexplained 48-hour media and telemetry blackout at SpaceX.
Which is huge, considering how public they usually are.
Exactly. And the leaps that triggered it. These whispers of a discovery just beyond Mars that completely violates the standard model of physics. Now, I am firmly planting my feet as the skeptical tech analyst today. I want to ground us in the actual hard data because extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Absolutely. And you'll need that skepticism.
Right. Well, you are going to help us synthesize the physics and the, frankly, terrifying existential implications of what this data suggests. No fluff. We are taking a hard look at whether humanity has inadvertently stumbled into a cosmic trap.
I'm ready. I mean, the telemetry data we have is incredibly dense, and it requires us to ask some very uncomfortable questions about celestial mechanics and, our assumptions about the asteroid belt in general.
Okay, let's unpack this. To understand why aerospace executives are allegedly losing sleep, we have to start with the precipitating event. Like I said, SpaceX is a company that practically weaponizes public attention. Total transparency is their brand.
Right, they thrive on it.
We get live video feeds of rockets exploding, real-time telemetry, Elon posting memes at 3 in the morning. But according to these leaked tracking reports during a recent Deep Space Vanguard probe test, they just went dark.
Total silence.
A complete 48-hour media and communications blackout. Now, as a skeptic, my first instinct is, well, this is a hardware failure. Like a server rack caught fire in Hawthorne, or a comms relay just went down. SpaceX delays things for technical reviews all the time.
Yeah, and a communications relay failure totally explains a loss of signal, but it doesn't explain a corporate lockdown.
What do you mean by lockdown, exactly?
Well, in the aerospace industry, when a probe simply dies, you announce a loss of signal. You investigate it publicly, or at least acknowledge it. What these leaks describe is a data quarantine.
A quarantine, that sounds...
It's extreme. A 48-hour silence across all external channels means the probe didn't just break. It sent back data so perplexing and potentially so sensitive that all external communication pipelines were severed.
Well, they tried to figure out if their own instruments were lying to them.
Exactly. They had to make sure they weren't crazy before anyone else saw it.
And the independent satellite trackers in Chile didn't just notice the silence. They noticed exactly where the probe was pointing when the data quarantine hit. It was focused on a very specific dark zone in the asteroid belt just past Mars.
Right. A patch of space that should be completely unremarkable.
But the leaks suggest the telemetry returned from this zone showed a localized gravitational field acting entirely on its own. Like, there's mass, but no optical footprint. But I have to push back hard here.
Go for it.
We are jumping from a data blackout to invisible gravity wells. Is it not infinitely more likely that this is just a massive sensor glitch? Because scientifically, this is like driving down a perfectly flat, empty highway, and your car's computer suddenly screams that you're in free fall into an invisible sinkhole. You'd assume the computer was fried, not the physical road.
What's fascinating here is that your highway analogy actually perfectly illustrates why they are panicking.
Hmm.
But we need to look at how a deep space probe actually measures its environment.
Okay, walk me through that.
In deep space telemetry, a glitch of this magnitude is practically impossible because of systemic redundancy.
Hmm.
Your car has one accelerometer, right? If it breaks, it thinks you're in a sinkhole.
Sure.
But a Vanguard probe relies on a symphony of distinct, overlapping physics. We're talking about internal inertial measurement units, optical star trackers, and radio Doppler shifts from Earth.
Right, but how do those actually rule out a glitch? Because to me, a computer is a computer. If the main bus fails, it all spits out garbage.
But they don't rely on the same physical phenomena. That's the key. Yeah. Let's start with the optical star trackers. These aren't just taking pictures. They measure the microscopic bending of starlight from distant galaxies.
Okay, so they're looking at the background stars.
Right. When a massive object is in the foreground, its gravity literally curves the light around it like a lens. The star trackers reported that the background stars around this dark zone were warping.
Bending light, wow.
Exactly. But you don't just trust the camera. You cross-reference it with the radio Doppler shift.
The Doppler shift. So like how a police siren drops in pitch as it speeds away from you.
Exactly like that. Earth is constantly sending a radio wave to the probe, and the probe bounces it back. If the probe is suddenly accelerating, that radio wave physically stretches out. The frequency drops.
Oh, I see. And you can't fake a physical stretching of a radio wave with a bad line of code.
You really can't. The Doppler shift data proved the physical mass of the probe was accelerating toward an invisible point in space, exactly where the star tracker saw the light bending.
So the physical movement perfectly matches the visual distortion.
You have optical gravitational lensing and physical kinetic acceleration perfectly aligning. That isn't a bad sensor reading. The probe was physically interacting with a gravity well.
Okay, so the telemetry is screaming that there is immense mass right in front of it. But the optical cameras, the infrared, everything else says there is absolutely nothing there. Empty space.
Precisely. It is a gravitational footprint without a physical body that our instruments can detect. Under our standard model of physics, mass has to equal matter. If the matter is entirely invisible across the entire electromagnetic spectrum, we are dealing with something that breaks our current understanding of reality.
Okay, let's assume the physics data is ironclad. We have invisible mass in the asteroid belt, but a localized gravity well doesn't completely explain the human element of these leaks.
You mean the corporate reaction?
Yeah. You don't institute a global corporate blackout for a cool new physics anomaly. That brings us to Elon Musk's behavior. We analyzed the transcripts of his public appearances over the last 6 months, and the contrast is jarring. For a decade, Musk has been the ultimate space optimist.
Oh, absolutely. Colonizing Mars was framed as a grand adventure, the romance of expanding consciousness.
It was always positioned as the next logical, almost triumphant step in human evolution. But look at the transcripts from the last few weeks. The guy who posts memes is suddenly incredibly grim.
Yeah, the tone shift is undeniable.
His tone has radically shifted from exploration to a kind of desperate, white-knuckle urgency. He's looking visibly stressed, dropping these cryptic hints that humanity must become a multi-planetary species immediately. Not in 50 years, but right now, as a pure survival imperative.
This is where we have to apply the Fermi Paradox, but not in the abstract way we usually talk about it.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, our audience knows the math. The universe is ancient. It should be teeming with megastructures and radio signals, yet we hear dead silence. We usually assume the solution to this paradox, the great filter, is something a civilization does to itself.
Like climate collapse, rogue AI, nuclear war, the great filter is usually a mirror we hold up to our own flaws.
Exactly. Musk has always talked about the great filter as a philosophical reason to back up the biosphere. But this telemetry data reframes the Fermi paradox entirely. What if the great filter isn't a sociological hurdle? What if it is a literal physical object sitting in our local neighborhood?
Here's where it gets really interesting. If we overlay the leaked telemetry of an invisible gravity well just past Mars with Musk's sudden panic shift in tone, it paints a terrifying picture.
It really does.
Are we suggesting that this Vanguard probe didn't just find a physics anomaly, but actually physically bumped into the cosmic filter?
Well, think about it. If you are the CEO leading the charge to put human beings on Mars, And your Vanguard probe detects an impossible invisible gravitational hazard sitting directly on your planetary flight path.
Your perspective instantly shifts.
Completely. You go from, let's explore the cosmos, to, we are trapped in a cage. The urgency makes perfect sense. The clock is suddenly ticking.
Right, so let's ground this back in the astrophysics. If we operate under the assumption that these leaks are accurate, that this invisible mass is out there and it's terrified the executives who have the raw data, we have to look at what this thing actually is.
Right. What is the object itself?
The sources circulating among the astronomers in Chile outline two prevailing theories. Let's tackle the natural hazard theory first.
The astrophysics community's first instinct is always to find a natural explanation, even if it requires extreme physics. And the leading natural theory here is a primordial black hole.
Now hold on. When people hear black hole, they think of a collapsed hypergiant star, something that would swallow the entire solar system. How could a black hole be hiding in the asteroid belt without us noticing?
Because a primordial black hole didn't form from a dying star. It formed in the first fraction of a second after the Big Bang.
Wait, really? The Big Bang made black holes?
Yeah, the universe was basically a massive pressure cooker, and in certain dense pockets, matter was crushed so tightly it collapsed into a microsingularity. We're talking about an object the size of a bowling ball, or even a marble, but compressed with the mass of a small moon.
How does a bowling ball hold a moon's mass? And why is it invisible? Shouldn't it be glowing with Hawking radiation or have an accretion disk like the ones we see in those famous telescope images?
A primordial black hole this size wouldn't emit enough Hawking radiation for our current instruments to easily detect against the cosmic background. It's just too small.
And the glowing ring.
The accretion disk, that superheated gas, that only happens when a black hole is actively feeding on a dense gas cloud or a star. The asteroid belt is actually incredibly sparse.
Ah, so there's nothing for it to eat.
Right. If a bowling ball-sized black hole was captured by our sun's gravity billions of years ago and settled into an orbit past Mars, it wouldn't be feeding on anything. It would just be a silent, invisible point of intense gravity.
Okay, I want to use an analogy here to really understand the threat. If this thing is only the size of a bowling ball, it's not going to just swallow Earth like a vacuum cleaner. It sounds more like an orbital disruption.
Exactly.
Think of the asteroid belt like thousands of metronomes all ticking in perfect synchronization on a stage. This primordial black hole is one incredibly heavy, off-tempo metronome hidden on that same stage. It doesn't violently smash the others. Its localized gravity just slowly pulls the surrounding metronomes off beat, right?
That is a perfect way to visualize it. It's a gravitational perturbator. Over millions of years, as it orbits, it gently tugs on the trajectories of thousands of asteroids.
Growing them out of rhythm.
Yes. And eventually, that off-tempo disruption reaches a tipping point, sending a barrage of planet-killer asteroids hurtling toward the inner solar system. Or worse, it slowly pulls the orbits of Mars and Earth out of the sun's habitable zone. It is a ticking time bomb of celestial mechanics.
Okay, the physics of a primordial black hole checks out. But here is where I hit a massive wall with the natural hazard theory as a skeptic.
Let's hear it.
If this is just a rogue natural object, you don't institute a global corporate and governmental blackout. You don't censor data. You publish it, you map the gravitational field, and you calculate its orbit so you can avoid it. A desperate, terrified cover-up implies someone at the top thinks this isn't natural.
Which brings us to the second theory in the source documents, the one that keeps the astronomers awake at night.
And what's that?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the extraterrestrial theory suggests this localized gravitational field isn't a remnant of the Big Bang. It implies intent. It suggests the mass is an artificial structure, an ancient monolith.
Okay, we are jumping straight into Arthur C. Clarke territory here. A sentinel placed in the asteroid belt to watch us. But again, I have to push back.
Okay.
If a hyper-advanced alien civilization wanted to put a hidden camera in our solar system, why would it have a massive, clumsy gravitational footprint? That seems like a pretty terrible stealth mechanism.
You are thinking about stealth in human terms, like radar-absorbing paint and cold thrusters. But if a civilization is millions of years ahead of us technologically, their engineering relies on manipulating space-time itself.
Manipulating space-time.
Yes. To remain completely invisible across the entire electromagnetic spectrum, you have to bend light completely around your structure. You have to isolate yourself from the universe.
Oh, like a cloaking field.
Yes. But a cloaking field isn't a holographic projection. In physics, the only way to bend light like that is with immense gravity. The gravitational anomaly our probe detected isn't a flaw in their stealth design. It is the exhaust.
Wait. The gravity is the exhaust.
Exactly. It's the unavoidable byproduct of the space-time engine that keeps the structure hidden from our primitive telescopes. We aren't detecting the object. We are detecting the distortion field it uses to hide.
So we have an invisible, artificially generated gravity well sitting dead ahead on our path to Mars. Whether it's a primordial wrecking ball or an ancient cloaked watcher, the sources claim the truth is being suppressed by a coalition of corporate and governmental organizations.
That's what the leaks indicate.
And as a tech analyst, the logistics of a cover-up like that usually fall apart. How do you keep the greatest discovery in human history a secret when thousands of engineers have access to telemetry?
This raises an important question about sociological self-preservation. You keep it a secret because the alternative is instant, paralyzing global panic. Our entire civilization, our global economy, our 401ks, our political structures, our daily interpersonal conflicts is entirely built on the assumption that humanity has a long, open-ended future.
It's the psychological bedrock of everything we do.
Exactly. If a space agency stood up tomorrow and unequivocally stated, we have physical proof of an invisible massive object sitting just outside Mars. It might be a rogue black hole about to hurl asteroids at us, or it might be an observation post for a Type 3 civilization.
The stock markets would zero out in an hour.
The existential dread would paralyze the supply chain. You don't release that information until you have a viable solution or an escape route.
Which brings this whole deep dive right to your doorstep. Think about it for a second. If you knew, as a hard, undeniable fact, that a massive, invisible watcher was sitting just past Mars, how would it change your life today?
It would change everything.
Would you still care about your 5-year career plan? Would you still spend time arguing about trivial internet politics? The psychological weight of that knowledge would fundamentally break society.
It forces a complete reevaluation of what matters. And under that framework, Musk's erratic behavior and desperate push for Mars colonization isn't a billionaire's vanity project anymore. The space race is no longer about scientific curiosity or economic expansion.
It's a lifeboat. Every time we watch a massive rocket launch now, every test flight that pushes the envelope, it takes on this incredibly dark, desperate context. We aren't expanding into a grand frontier. We're trying to outrun a cosmic filter that is sitting right in our backyard before it decides our time is up.
It's a very sobering thought.
So what does this all mean? We started with a strange, easily dismissed anomaly, a 48-hour data blackout from SpaceX. We unpacked how the overlapping mechanics of star trackers and Doppler shifts rule out a simple sensor glitch, proving the existence of an impossible invisible mass in the asteroid belt.
Right.
And we traced how that terrifying telemetry perfectly correlates with the sudden panicked urgency of aerospace leaders who have realized the Great Filter might be a physical roadblock on our way to Mars.
We've seen how the grand dream of space exploration has narrowed down to two equally grim possibilities: a primordial black hole acting as a gravitational time bomb, or an ancient, cloaked extraterrestrial structure silently watching us in the dark.
The sources paint a picture of a humanity that is secretly racing against a cosmic clock, desperately trying to build rockets to survive this newly discovered anomaly. But here is something else for you to consider, something to mull over the next time you look up at that vast, seemingly empty night sky.
I think we all need to reconsider what we're looking at.
If that localized gravitational field truly is an ancient extraterrestrial monolith placed there to watch us, what if it isn't waiting for a specific time on a clock?
What do you mean?
What if the filter isn't an arbitrary deadline at all? What if it is triggered by the exact moment a species masters deep space travel? In our desperate, panicked rush to build massive rockets and escape the trap, are we actually about to spring it ourselves? Keep your eyes on the stars, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.